I thought it was a well-delivered speech. I think he said most of what I've been realizing or come to recognize for a long time is that we need to address the unpaid bills, and that there are going to have to be tremendous cuts. I don't know the total details. I've not seen the areas or whatever, but overall, I mean, I think he, to express the desire that we have to change the way we do business and pushing the unpaid bills into next fiscal year, and then has to stop at some point in time. And I do agree that if we give some stability to our fiscal well-being of the state, that it will draw in employers. Now, I think we have a lot more to do in that area of creating a climate for business growth that will naturally feed our revenue and economy. So, like I say, I mean, the devil is going to be in the details, and we didn't hear a lot of details. I mean, I'm concerned. I think pension has to be restructured just as Medicaid, and I think if you note, he didn't talk about restructuring pension. He talked about stabilization, and I think that's the idea of pushing off to the local governments. And I truthfully don't think at this point in time the mechanisms are in place for them to absorb it, because his whole speech had a sense of urgency to it. And originally we heard that was going to be phased in. I just don't think it can be accomplished quickly to force it over into local governments. And I think the pension things need to be stable and sustainable, but they also are in my opinion, in dire straits of becoming insolvent.
Was it fair for the governor to punt that, to not give specifics on Medicaid and pensions and say everything's on the table, but that's for me and the legislature?
Right. I mean, you're right. There's a lot of innuendos there. I mean, with the Medicaid, complicit with that was the idea that maybe rates were going to be cut. And I know right now it's like 80% right now. And I don't know that our medical community, especially downstate, is going to be able to perform services at less amounts. And, certainly it's a combination effort of getting the payments readily, achieved, not this late payment cycle. But I don't know if they can or they will accept rate reduction. And I'm talking about hospitals, medical providers.
The governor, as Amanda pointed out, said everything's on the table, but we know that from his history, he's had a hard time working with the General Assembly. It seems like he's kind of saying, I want to work with you. Do you think that's an attitude that's going to hold up as the spring session goes on?
I hope so, but I did see, kind of blaming the legislature for all the errors that have been made in the pension systems or the Medicaid system, whatever. I think he's wise to say that we need to stick together and pull together through this, because certainly logger jams are not going to help. We need to get this prompt delivery of services and reduction of deficit and payment of bills. So there is a real sense of urgency to getting to business. So that part's fine. I don't know that the days in the session are going to allow. So if he's going to have to put more sessions in or days. So as I said, I've got to look at the funding. Talking about 08 levels of spending, 08 was the highest revenue we had, and that's when we overspent. So I've got to see that perspective and those figures. So overall, I agree basically with his gist of yes, it's time to really, really cut back and get busy. And I know people are going to be looking at these facility closures. One, I don't want to see Jacksonville Developmental Center closed. I think that there is a certain segment of population that in developmental areas that maybe cannot live in community-based settings. And so there's areas that I didn't agree with, areas that I need more detail. Overall, I'm willing to work with him to achieve putting this fiscal state back in order.
Any thoughts on higher education funding and the bump?
Well, I know that the early childhood grants, going to that first, many of my schools were cutting the grants because they weren't getting paid. They're still waiting for their October payment, and the schools looking at funding for the next year are saying, we can't continue this, we can't wait. So they had to make decisions whether to cut or not. So, him telling them that he's doing this more. I want to see MAP grants structured better. I think that you will see perhaps an abuse sometimes of that funding, and I've talked to a lot of higher education facilities that it's a lump sum, much like a Pell Grant, and I think we need to structure it better and follow up on the success rate of the kids getting MAP grants. I mean, I want to see kids being able to afford education, getting out with less debt, and all that. But what I do think, and I've heard that MAP grants structurally may have a lack of safeguard. You know, they're just a block grant basically to a student, and I would like to see it maybe structured more through the going through the school channels that they monitor and make sure that these funds are being used for educational purposes and getting that student to get an education.